Ilhan Omar says the Minneapolis Police Department is rotten to the root. But does she have a plan for fixing it? Joe Biden is out speaking and campaigning, which is a big help for President Trump. Plus, Fox News' Chris Wallace gives a classic example of the media pushing its own left-wing narrative when it comes to race. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. I want to welcome new folks here that are first-timers to the show and thank all of you for tuning in this past Saturday for our Saturday live stream with Brandon Tatum. It was awesome. It was our best one yet. Here's a link to it, and I'll put it at the end of the show as well. The Q&A, the discussions on race and police from our perspectives, especially Brandon's, was absolutely awesome. I invite you guys to check it out. It was just such a good show. Now we're going to move on to today's show. We're going to start with Ilhan Omar because she was on CNN's State of the Union with Jake Tapper this weekend talking about the Minneapolis Police Department and talking about their city council who just unanimously voted a resolution to disband their police force. So she was on there. Jake Tapper asked the logical question of, okay, you voted for this thing to disband the police department. What happens next?
What takes its place? If you could just decree what takes its place, who investigates crimes? Who arrests criminals? What happens?
Fair enough. Like I said, the Minneapolis City Council voted unanimously to disband the police department, yet they have no clue on what's coming next. They have no idea. So, probably, maybe, Ilhan Omar has some insights for us. Here's what she says.
Yeah, so Minneapolis unanimously just voted on a resolution that will engage the community on a one-year process of what happens as we go through the process of dismantling the department and starting anew.
Wow, that was not insightful. All she did was tell us what we already knew. We knew what the Minneapolis City Council did. What about her ideas? She's pushing to disband the police department, yet she has no ideas, no clue on what the replacement would be. But she did spend a lot of time blasting the police department as beyond inept, racist, and corrupt.
And so you can't really reform a department that is rotten to the root. What you can do is rebuild.
So the police department is rotten to the root, even though for decades, for generations, it's been under the control of the Democrats. They have Democrat control. They've improved minority hiring practices. They do all of this stuff in these Democrat-run cities, and yet they say the police department is rotten to the root. Maybe isn't that an indication that this leadership is bad, that they don't know what they're doing, and maybe the leadership should be replaced? Yet she offers no ideas except to come together as a community and maybe try and do what San Francisco just decided to do. Well, what's that? Well, they just voted that they're going to stop sending the police to certain situations. And here's a report from the Washington Times. San Francisco police will stop responding to neighbor disputes, reports on homeless people, school discipline interventions, and other non-criminal activities as part of a police reform plan the mayor announced Thursday. Mayor London Breed said in a news release that on calls that don't involve a threat to public safety, police would be replaced by trained, unarmed professionals to limit unnecessary confrontation between the police department and the community. So where do you think that is headed? I mean, just think about it. What if then some social worker is called to a dispute between neighbors and that turns violent? What if they respond to a homeless call and that homeless person is actually mentally unstable and becomes belligerent, hostile? What do you do then? These people are unarmed. They're not trained in that kind of confrontation per the definition of what San Francisco wants to do. It's just a recipe for disaster. But that's what Ilhan Omar is pushing. That's what she's doing and blasting the police. So how do you think this is playing out in Minneapolis? Well, as you can expect, police are starting to turn in their badges. Here's a report from the Washington Times. At least 7 Minneapolis police officers have quit, and another 7 are in the process of resigning, citing a lack of support from the department and city leaders as protest over George Floyd's death escalated. Current and former officers told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that officers are upset by Mayor Jacob Fry's decision to abandon the 3rd Precinct station during the protest. Demonstrators set the building on fire after officers left. So in some instances, officers aren't even showing up. They're just saying, forget this, I'm not dealing with this. Here's more of the report. Deputy Chief Henry Halverson said in an email to supervisors earlier this month that some officers have simply walked off the job without filing the proper paperwork, creating confusion about who is still working and who isn't. Minneapolis police spokesman John Elder downplayed the departures. There's nothing that leads us to believe at this point the numbers are so great that it's going to be problematic, Elder said. People seek to leave employment for a myriad reasons. The MPD is no exception. Really. I can think of a couple major reasons why they're leaving, and it has nothing to do with casual job changing. The real thing to do for these police is to not show up at all. Just stay home. Stay home for a while. See how these inner cities like it. See how it reacts to lawlessness, to no law enforcement at all. You want to defund the police? I say, police, give them what they want and see how it turns out. Absolutely nuts, and no actual helpful advice from Ilhan Omar. So next, I want to talk about Joe Biden. But first, folks, we are growing like crazy, and I appreciate it so much. So if you're new to the show, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and please hit that bell so you'll be notified. We're making our push for 100,000 subscribers by Election Day. 100K by Election Day, and we could do it with all of your support. I appreciate it so much. All right, we're going to talk about Joe Biden because, after all, this is a political show. And it just seems like forever, all the news was coronavirus. That's all anyone talked about. Coronavirus, coronavirus. Now it's defund the police and how there's systemic racism everywhere. And that seems to be the only stories. But Joe Biden is out again. He's out campaigning. He's out speaking, which is great news for President Trump. Here's just an example. Here's a clip of a recent speech that Joe Biden made.
You know, the rapidly rising I don't know.
So it's one thing if that clip were isolated, but it's not. You know it's not. You see it over and over again. He can't get his thoughts together. He stumbles on basic principles, doesn't know how to react to questions, gets hostile, wants to fight workers and stuff. And you see it over and over again. This man is not ready to be president. He should not be president. And the more he speaks, the more it's ammunition for President Trump. So that was speaking. Then he got on Twitter. And when you look at his Twitter feed, this is what I went through just to see what he's talking about. It is so unoriginal. There are no original thoughts there at all. Nothing profound for someone who wants to be president of the United States. In fact, it's like it's coming straight from the Democrat left-wing playbook and talking points. Just one issue after another, blasting President Trump. For example, President Trump wants to hold rallies, right? He wants to start holding rallies. So, of course, Joe Biden comes out and talks about coronavirus. Here's this tweet. Donald Trump forgot about COVID-19, but COVID-19 didn't forget about us. The president couldn't wish away the virus in April. He couldn't tweet it away in May, and he can't ignore it away in June. Give me a break. Democrats had no problem at all forgetting about coronavirus when people are protesting, when they are gathering, pushed together, no masks, thousands of people. They didn't have a problem with that. In fact, those bizarre healthcare advocates in Washington state actually said it was good, that they needed to be doing this, that it was vital to the public health. They completely forgot about coronavirus until President Trump wants to talk about it, and Joe Biden is singing the same old song. Then he puts up this tweet. He says, "We need a president who chooses hope over fear." Now, I just threw that one in there because it reminds me of this clip that he gave at his speech.
We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts.
Yep, we support truth over facts. Hope over fear, truth over facts for Joe Biden. It was great. Then he puts up this one that, again, is straight from the Democrat left-wing talking points. We need a president who heals, not one who fans the flames of hate. We need a president who unites, not one who sows further discord for political gain. We need a president who leads the way with a steady hand, not one who incites violence with erratic tweets. Give me a break. Where do you even start with that? I mean, the first one, we need a president who heals, not who fans the flames of hate. Hello, that's your old boss, Joe Biden. That's Barack Obama. He did the worst of any president I've seen on race relations. It's absolutely undeniable, and Joe Biden goes and says that. Then, as far as sowing discord for political gain, look at coronavirus. Look at these marches. Look at the narrative that's coming from the Democrats in the media. It's all about political gain. They are spinning things out of control also they could advance their agenda. It makes no sense. Brandon and I talked about this on Saturday. Again, I invite you guys to check it out. We went over the facts. We went over the facts of police. We went over the facts of race, all the data. You see that the narrative is not there. This is not about systemic racism or nationwide corrupt police. Those are false narratives being pushed by the left, and Black Lives Matter. And corporations are buying into it. Politicians are buying into it because that is the trend, but it is not right. Just because it's the trendy thing, do not make the facts right. It's just absolutely unreal. So next, we're going to move on from Joe Biden, and we're going to talk about Fox News and Chris Wallace. But first, I got to tell you about my friends over at Bottle Breacher. Friends, you need to check them out. They are absolutely awesome. This is a veteran-owned company, made in America products. Just go to bottlebreacher.com. Check it out. It's the best in man gifts, promotional items, groomsmen gifts. Just go to bottlebreacher.com. Use coupon code Bobby13 for 15% off your next purchase. All right, we're going to talk about Fox News and Chris Wallace because he had HUD Secretary Ben Carson on yesterday. And it was just, he brought him on to talk about the latest shooting in Atlanta. And we can get into that. I don't want to get into the details yet till more information comes out. They had body cam footage. They had dash cam footage. The police responded to a call. A guy was drunk, passed out in a car, is blocking a Wendy's drive-thru. They spent 30 minutes with him, talking to him, going through field sobriety tests, going through breathalyzer tests. They go to arrest him, and that's when things turn violent. That's when the suspect resisted. That's when he fought with police. That's when he stole a taser. He takes off running, turns back to fire the taser. That's when shots are fired at him. The suspect ends up dying, Rayshard Brooks, and now the Wendy's is burnt to the ground, and there's national uproar. Watch the footage yourself, but also wait for the investigation to unfold. The officer has already been fired. It's just, the reaction has just been crazy. But again, I invite you to watch the footage. But the point is that Secretary Carson was on, and Chris Wallace invites him on, and you just see from the questioning how a narrative is trying to be advanced. And with that context of this shooting in Atlanta, here's what Chris Wallace says.
But was it appropriate to use deadly force against someone whose original offense was that he fell asleep in the drive-thru lane at a Wendy's?
So you see what Chris Wallace did there? He tried to imply that the police overreacted simply based on his phrasing of the initial conditions of the setting, the reason that they were called, as if the threat, the reaction to a threat is totally based on the initial circumstances. So if a police officer pulls someone over for speeding, then it's now a speeding incident. Doesn't matter if the guy hops out of the car with a gun, starts mowing down at the cops. The initial conditions were a traffic violation. So the police should only respond at a certain level. That's what he's implying with that. And how ridiculous is it? You respond to the threat as the threat escalates or de-escalates. Then you de-escalate. It's so bizarre. Again, for 30 minutes they talked to this guy. Then the suspect escalated. They responded. Now, we dive into whether it was right or wrong, proper response later. But the point is Chris Wallace's question already puts a idea in the head of the viewers that the police were not responding appropriately because it was just a drunken person. Give me a break on that. Then he asked if there's a problem, a racial problem with policing in the black community, and said this.
Over the last 5 years in Minneapolis, police used force against blacks at a rate at least 7 times that against whites. And nationwide, blacks, who are less than 13% of the population, are shot and killed by police at more than twice the rate that whites are.
All right, raise your hand if you know what's missing in that one. Anyone? You know what's missing? Again, he paints a narrative there to imply that the police are out of control, that nationwide they are targeting blacks, and here's the stats. He doesn't give the other stats. He doesn't give the other side of the picture. The fact that black males, who are responsible for most of the violence, represent 6% of the population. They make up 53% of all murders, a disproportionate amount of murders, a disproportionate amount of robberies, a disproportionate amount of assaults. Those are all the facts. He left out that half. He doesn't put that half in, yet puts those facts out there and then asks a question based on it. Like, look how bad these guys are, without giving the whole story. It's just absolutely pathetic. I invite you guys to watch that interview. It's up on the Fox News YouTube channel. And just see the other questions, the other implications Chris Wallace makes when trying to do an interview. It's so unprofessional, and it is so biased to the left. It is advancing an agenda just through the questioning. All right, folks, that's our show for today. We're out of time. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is the 13-Minute News Hour. Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching, and before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified, and here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-Minute News Hour. And don't forget to check out GOPUSA.com for the best in conservative news and commentary. We'll see you next time.